You know Star Wars is in a bad place when even the Shills can't lie about it anymore. It was only a matter of time before even the media stops trying to deflect valid criticism with words that mean nothing like toxic fandom and actually starts holding these companies accountable for creating a bad product. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
I don't talk about Star Wars much anymore because frankly it's a dead brand, and I just don't like watching a soulless corporation bastardize the thing I love. So some time ago I chose to walk away from it, and honestly that was the best option. When it comes right down to it, Star Wars just isn't worth the energy anymore. And it appears that general audiences are starting to feel the same way, because the last two series that Lucasfilm produced, Andor, which nobody gave a about,
I don't care!
and Ahsoka, which is coming in well under projections as far as streaming numbers go, all signs point to Star Wars being a dead brand, and that has everything to do with how Disney and Lucasfilm have treated the property since they purchased it. From the very beginning, Lucasfilm has tried to treat Star Wars like every other successful property. For some reason, they overlook the fact that this property was already successful in its own right. But instead, they chose to flood the market with mediocre content. But they didn't account for one thing, and that's that Star Wars fans, at least real Star Wars fans, are smarter than they thought they were.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
We are not fooled by the quantity over quality approach. And as longtime fans, we understood the difference between good Star Wars and bad Star Wars. And on more than one occasion, Lucasfilm has created something that feels more like a parody than the real thing.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
And it feels like finally, now with the release of Ahsoka, even the mainstream media is starting to take notice. They're starting to take notice of all of these things that us fans have been saying for years and getting called toxic for. This article comes from IGN of all places, and it's titled "Star Wars just feels like toy unboxing videos now." Wow, somebody at IGN finally grew a set of balls and is actually going to tell it like they see it. There truly is a first time for everything. This article does contain some spoilers for Ahsoka, but if you're anything like me, you really don't give a shit. This person begins the article by comparing watching certain moments in Ahsoka to going over another kid's house when they were a child, but the kid didn't let them play with any of their toys. And basically it boils down to this person asking the question, why do I even bother to go there? Proclaiming that the Disney Plus era of Star Wars doesn't feel like Star Wars, it feels like a toy unboxing video. Now I'm going to let this person have their moment because they're definitely onto something here, but I'm just going to add that Star Wars hasn't felt like Star Wars long before Disney Plus was even a thing. He mentions how George Lucas always had a toyetic bent to the creative process when crafting his stories, which is very true. George Lucas was famous for creating characters and situations that would offer opportunities later on from a merchandising perspective. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that as long as those things make sense within the context of the story.
That makes sense.
The issue is that the creatives who are now behind Star Wars, the new Star Wars, have made the new shows and movies feel like it's someone just playing with their old toys. Now this has everything to do with Lucasfilm being creatively bankrupt and not being able to create anything new that captures audiences' attention. So they've now resorted back to digging up old established characters that are familiar to people because nostalgia is a hell of a drug and a lot of people still fall for it. The issue is that the new Lucasfilm doesn't understand these characters or why people love them. So oftentimes we get something that's either inconsistent with what came before, or worse, just flat out ruins the character to the point that people don't even care anymore. And Boba Fett is a great example of this. A lot of people, including myself, couldn't get over how they took one of the most mysterious and coolest characters in the Star Wars universe and made him completely forgettable and boring in his own show, and even tried to use one of their own original characters to outshine him. But hey, at least we got Boba Fett riding a Rancor, right? To the article's credit, they reference this moment in the book of Boba Fett as being the most reminiscent of a child playing with action figures. Just do what looks cool even if it doesn't make sense from a character or situational perspective. The article also brings up how Lucasfilm had some success with The Mandalorian, which they refer to as an original character, but if we're being honest with ourselves, this was simply their cheap attempt to cash in on Mandalorian lore without using established characters, just so they can pretend like they did something original. Even the gimmick of Baby Yoda is nothing more than a cutified version of what came before.
Do or do not. There is no try.
And they weren't really breaking as much new ground as they claimed to be. And even in The Mandalorian, they had to fall back on established legacy characters to keep people interested. A CGI Luke Skywalker is still Luke Skywalker in some people's minds. And the only reason that people were somewhat excited for that is because of how poorly Luke was handled in The Last Jedi. People were so desperate to see their hero in his true form one last time because of the mess that Lucasfilm themselves created. The article also talks about, much to my surprise, how Rogue One really wasn't breaking any new ground either, and how it was more just playing it safe and plugging in holes. And this is my biggest critique of that film and why I'm not as impressed with it as other people are, because if you have a general knowledge of Star Wars lore, a plot like Rogue One really doesn't offer much in the way of unpredictability. And if you're anything like me, you find yourself just sitting there watching that movie, waiting for Darth Vader to show up again. Because Rogue One doesn't offer anything that's remotely as interesting as the greatest villain in cinematic history. I very rarely hear anyone talking about this aspect of Rogue One, so this was refreshing to see.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
The article continues by talking about the Disney Plus show's treatment of Darth Vader. First, he's tossed around by Obi-Wan, again, in a canon-breaking duel in the Obi-Wan series. A duel that undoubtedly takes away the prestige of their later conflict in A New Hope. And now apparently in Ahsoka, Ahsoka also defeats him in some capacity. Apparently it's left kind of ambiguous, but that doesn't negate the fact that this duel already took place in Rebels, another show that I didn't watch, and that Vader has apparently become the new Disney Star Wars whipping boy. The article puts it perfectly. Lately, Vader, or Anakin, continues getting trotted out seemingly just to get his ass handed to him by a series protagonist. The real question is, why is Lucasfilm sacrificing the mystique of its greatest character to build out these shows and characters that nobody really cares about? These are the types of decisions that makes everyone question whether or not Lucasfilm and everyone's false savior, Dave Filoni, actually know what they're doing. The article continues, quote, "The more familiar a thing gets through repetition, the less impactful they all become. A phenomenon that's especially disappointing when a galaxy as sprawling as Star Wars limits itself to the same characters and desert twin sun planets. It's like unboxing the same toy over and over again. How many Disney Star Wars stories have taken place on Tatooine or a desert planet that looks like Tatooine? Why are we seeing Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker on every single show that they produce, when he is clearly a character that should be reserved for big moments only because he is that important of a character? And it all lends itself to Lucasfilm playing it safe, showing people everything they've already seen before, and hoping nobody notices. But guess what? We notice. If Lucasfilm were the least bit competent, they would do what any intelligent company would do and maximize their opportunities.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
They had a great opportunity to blend old Star Wars with new Star Wars and bridge the gap in the fandom. That's how you achieve longevity in your brand, and if you don't believe me, then just ask George Lucas. If Lucasfilm would have exhibited a certain level of respect for the past, while simultaneously building for the future, they might not find themselves in the situation that they are currently in, where they feel the need to further tarnish what George Lucas already built, because they aren't creative enough to come up with anything worthwhile to intrigue the fandom. Now, you might enjoy Ahsoka, and that's fine. That is your opinion, and you are entitled to it. But you cannot deny that everything that Disney and Lucasfilm has done up until this point has come with the penalty of audiences losing interest in this once juggernaut of a brand. This whole situation will go down as an all-time fumble, and I'm really glad that more people are starting to realize it.
Y'all be cool. Right on.